Ewald, thank you so much for coming on the show. What a pleasure to have you on. I appreciate you taking some time. You're not our first Dutch guest, but you are the first guest to actually join us from the Netherlands, specifically from Amsterdam. So welcome here.
Thank you. Very glad to be here. Right.
We're recording this on Valentine's Day, which is appropriate because you've written the book on how to build a digital fundraising factory and fuel it with love. Because donor love or donor understanding, whatever you want to call it, is what makes so much of this work possible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We've been very much focused on the fundraising part, and yeah, maybe you should call it engagement raising instead of fundraising, because without the engagement, without the love that you pour into it, there's no money coming out of it.
Right. Now we're going to get into how to build that digital fundraising factory today. Your premise and your promise in the book is a framework that will help you grow your individual income, your individual income fundraising by 1% every single week. Now, I didn't do great in finance and accounting. I much preferred economics, but by my math, that means you're doubling your overall revenue every year and a half ish. Is that
Something
correct?
like that. Yeah. So there's this compound interest calculation
Yeah.
where it is if you grow 1% per week, you need 72 weeks. And this whole thing, well, just to compare it with uh, investors, so startup investors, they
Mhm.
want their startups to grow 5% per week. So it would mean only to double it every 14 weeks. Um,
Right.
and just to explain that a little bit more, of course, if you start with zero, it doesn't make sense to grow with 1% per week. So to be honest, it is you need a couple of phases to get into a certain rhythm. And
Right.
once we get into the rhythm in what I call phase three, then we need to go into this 1% per week
Right.
increase.
Yeah, it's funny you say that the 5% per week, which is what investors expect in Silicon Valley. I was listening to a podcast with somebody who built like fantastically successful podcast company now, but he got investment from one of the bigger VCs in Silicon Valley, and he was on the call with him, telling him how great they were doing financially, and the investor was saying, "Don't tell me that. It means you're not growing fast enough."
Yeah, yeah.
It means you're being way too conservative. Like
Mhm.
if you're posting a profit this early on, you're not pouring it into growing the revenue factory, the acquisition factory, right?
Yeah, but in our case, it is nice if we can make it go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So let's settle for
Absolutely.
this 1%, right, and then
All right.
do it
Yeah, 1% growth
with
per
love.
week.
Yeah.
Honestly, for a lot of charities, that sounds fantastic.
Mhm.
Now, have you, in your work, have you seen charities who've actually been able to achieve that level of growth consistently?
Oh yeah, definitely. Although, yeah, my vision was for well until 2018, it was very focused on the Netherlands only. But there, yeah, it started out with one of the organizations where I first joined as a consultant. Um, but there we went into this rhythm already in 2006, and then left 2011. Um, and yeah, so they we were able to do this consistently. Um, but also, for instance, now a bigger one, Save the Children Netherlands.
Hmm.
Um, well, they also went into this rhythm of experimenting, aligning their organization along the customer journey, which is another big factor, and
Yeah.
they're also doing it. So there's many examples. One Planet Crowd did it. So I have some, but for a bigger one, Save the Children in the Netherlands, they
Right.
consistently do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned aligning your team along the customer journey, which is you're building your team to solve for donor needs rather than internal needs. And that's a whole podcast onto itself, but hopefully after somebody listens to this episode, they have a bit of a blueprint on how to start and what it might take to do that. Now, just high level, we're going to get into your blueprint, but high level, for those charities who are able to actually grow 1% a week consistently and double revenue every 72-ish weeks, what did it take?
Well, in almost all cases, it goes again. It takes a management team or a board that gives this marching order and believes it and supports it. And without them, it is so hard to do this bottom up. But it can be done. I do describe it. But at a certain moment, to really get going, you need some momentum. You need their support. So what does it take? Well, at least it takes that some people at least have an itchy feeling that something needs to be done differently, and they give time to experiment with that.
Right. Okay. So it takes buy-in from the top. It takes leadership who, even if they don't understand how to build sort of this digital fundraising factory, they understand, this is an area where we need to grow in and we need to invest in, and we need to see if we can build this thing up. Even if I don't understand anything about it, I'm going to go out and I'm going to invest in the people who do.
Yeah. And well, of course, I also try to help in the book a bit by making the part 1 and the part 2 parts in the book that everybody should read, but they can understand. Right. And then it goes into much more detail for the one who are actually going to execute it. But I do hope, well, like everybody, to bridge that gap there as well.
Yeah, part 1 helps leadership and just your team understand why it's important, what the strategy is. Part 2 is a lot more for the tacticians and the technicians who are going to go in and they're going to build this thing. Since this is a highly sort of tactical podcast, we're going to spend some time in part 2, which is your actual blueprint, and we're going to go over it high level. But I just highly encourage anybody to pick up the book. I was introduced to your work. Well, one, you mentioned the Build Good Fundraising podcast in your book, so I appreciate that. Thank you. But I was introduced to your book through a book funnel, and I also took your fundraising quiz funnel, which was a lot of fun. And our audience is fundraisers and marketers, so they know all about funnels. But the book funnel isn't very commonly used in nonprofit organizations, it seems. But it's a great way to attract like-minded people. Because picking up a book and reading it is a bit of a commitment. And so, first of all, loved your book. But second of all, clearly you're a very savvy digital marketer, and you've implemented this for many organizations in Europe and elsewhere. And you practice what you preach in your own business. So that's why I'm excited to get into your framework. There are 5 phases in your framework. Really, there are 6, but phase 0 is what it takes to start phase 1. But let's start with phase 0. So we've done a survey of our audience here at the Build Good Fundraising podcast. I can tell you that many people are probably they've done all the work in phase 0. So most people listening to this show have a Facebook following. Most of them have a donor file. Most of them are emailing their donors and have some sort of email file. So they've got a bit of a support of donors already. So they've got whatever you want to call it, product market fit, or they validated, or they've got an audience around them. Yeah. And now they want to take it to the next level. Now, what is crucial in phase 0 that we absolutely have to have before we move on to phase 1?
Yeah, so the whole phase 0, it is a bit more like just do it. Just test out whether your value proposition is working.
Right.
So for that, you need to have an idea of a value proposition. And basically, I'm saying there, you don't need anything other than a Facebook page and a Facebook form, and maybe $100, $200 advertising budget. And then you advertise your value proposition, your thing, and you say, well, you want to join or you want to read more about this. Now, if you don't get clicks, if you don't get anybody signing up for this, then you'd better go back to the whiteboard
Yeah.
and talk about it some more, and then try it
Right.
again.
Okay. So it's just throwing a couple $100 at Facebook ads and seeing if your message is resonating, if your value is resonating, your value proposition, if your offer is working, just to see kind of how, quote unquote, the market reacts to your message. Okay.
Yeah, and I like this little detail. Sometimes when I'm trying out something new myself, maybe even for my own business, I just invent another name for a company.
Yeah.
I make the Facebook page, I make the Facebook form, and I try it out.
Right.
And well, if I then get for $50 I get a new email address, then I know that I have a very good proposition, and then I build it into my own business.
Right. Okay.
Right. So it's
Yep.
also a very easy way to avoid all the stress with the brand police and
Right.
all
Right.
this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So low risk way to test the value proposition, both low risk internally, because your brand won't necessarily be attached to it. So you don't have to go through all the channels all the time. But also just externally to see if you ask family and friends for feedback, they're going to tell you, yeah, that looks good. Or yeah, it looks like you're up to something cool. But if you run a Facebook ad to a cold audience, cold traffic, you're going to see if it actually resonates with people or not.
Correct. Yes.
All right, so then we move on to phase one. Phase one, you call it finding a rhythm. What do you mean by finding a rhythm? What does that mean?
Um, well, I'm again going over or introducing here the whole concept of the customer journey or the donor journey, which means awareness creation, then attracting people really to your website, getting leads, getting your first donation, and then getting repeat donations. And finding rhythm is finding the rhythm to work consistently on each of these phases in the customer journey.
Right. So finding a rhythm to build this continuous stream of people who will visit your landing page, who will either download a lead generating sort of a thing like a
Yeah.
book, a PDF, a video, a resource. Who a percentage of those will turn into first-time donors, and then a percentage of those will turn into recurring donations. So
Correct.
so setting up that whole stream, that's what you're talking about, finding a rhythm.
Yeah, and then finding the way to make this indeed something that is predictable. So it's not one big peak like some people do with the Christmas campaign or the fall campaign or one campaign and then nothing, but really finding a way to make this all predictable and
Right.
steady.
Yeah, so this needs to become a continuous business process, like an ongoing thing we do all year round. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Now, most of the time, a lot of small and medium-sized shops, they have an audience, and they've built that audience through events and through some peer-to-peer stuff and family and friends and board bringing in people.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they run a Facebook ad when they've got something going on. They might boost a post, or they might run an ad, and they try to find maybe an audience that is similar to the people who are already engaging with them on Facebook. Most of the time, we're not seeing the big charities are doing that, but most of the time, we're not seeing small and medium-sized charities actually run Facebook ads throughout the year, trying to get cold traffic and then trying to get leads off of that. And I think maybe that has to do with the fact that it seems like a risk, and nobody really knows how to do it. How do you see that? Are you seeing people get more entrepreneurial and boards and leadership saying, no, we need to be trying to do digital acquisition consistently and constantly?
Yeah, I luckily, of course, and especially since these events, they kind of dried up. The in-person events dried up, so
Yeah.
we saw so many challenges being organized. We saw so many organizations trying to do webinars and stuff. So the lead magnet stuff, um, as I call it, a bit, but that part is done now by many organizations,
Hmm.
also smaller ones because they just have to. Um, but then, of course, it doesn't always have to come from Facebook advertising. If they have if they have something good, then there's also a lot of organic traffic and word of mouth going on, but also the Google Grants that
Yep.
will give you your continuous stream of leads, or at least visitors that you can turn into leads on your
Right.
website this way.
Yep. Just like a really highly tactical question here. Let's say we're not quite sure yet if we're going to do the Google Grant thing, if we're going to do Facebook ads, maybe we're going to LinkedIn ads. In any case, good idea to today install the Google tag and the Facebook pixel in the LinkedIn Insights tag on our site already, right? Um, so
I
the,
would
so
I would recommend that to
yeah,
to have your web shop, or maybe go on Fiverr and find somebody who can do that, at least, because that gives you some flexibility in the end. So yes, that is part of finding rhythm, is at least measuring what you're doing,
yeah.
and then see how you can do more of that.
Right. Just about every and I don't mean to keep comparing nonprofits to VC backed sort of startups, but just about every startup and just about every for profit these days, once they get it to a certain size, even mid-sized companies, they have a head of acquisition, like a head of growth and customer acquisition, a head of growth.
Mhm.
And their job is to find new leads and to just get people in the door. In the nonprofit sector, most of the time we have a director of development who's in charge of everything.
Mhm.
And one of those things is finding new donors. But have you actually seen a charity say, no, we're going to hire a head of digital donor acquisition?
Um, yeah, I do see more and more of these organizations turning from the old fashioned silos that used to work very well in the previous century,
Yeah.
uh, to something that is much more aligned along the customer journey, where, of course, what used to be maybe PR and communication, that they're much more focused on awareness creation, but then also with the KPI of, do I get visitors out of this?
Right. Yeah.
So yes, and they talk much more often with people who are, well, probably online marketeers who should get leads out of this. So I do see things turning within the organizations, but it's I've never heard the term head of acquisition as such
Sure.
here yet.
Yeah.
Um, that's also because half of our terms are maybe in English,
Sure.
and also some more traditional stuff. But I do see that this bigger charities having a team focused on this first part of the customer journey, and another team on the second part of
Hmm.
the customer journey, and then uh, maybe lots of teams on the part where you engage more with your existing donors, and
Right.
see whether you can do more
Yep.
together with them. So I, it's happening everywhere that um, uh, this transformation is taking place.
Yeah. All right. So that's phase one. Phase one is finding rhythm. It's building a continuous stream of visitors that turn into leads, that turn into donors, that eventually turn into recurring donations. And phase two is actually starting to optimize that rhythm. So phase one, you're just trying to find that rhythm. It's not optimized yet. You're just trying to, can we get traffic in the door? Can we get some of those folks to go into our system? Can we get some of those folks to become involved with us with a charitable gift? And can we get some of those folks to become monthly givers? That's it in phase one. But phase two, we're going to start to test and optimize this stream that we've started to build. And again, this is where many small shops begin to have this analysis paralysis. Because what should we test? There's like 100 pieces of this thing that we can test. How do we optimize? What's the thing that will get us the biggest result? You know, the Pareto principle. What 20% should we be focusing on to get 80% of the upside? And I know there's lots to talk about here, but I'm wondering, just because of the time that we have together, if we can focus on email, because many, in terms of digital, many shops are already doing email, even if they're maybe not doing a huge paid ad strategy yet. They're doing some email at least. And email, in terms of digital marketing, is also kind of a high leverage activity. Can be a very profitable channel. So let's start there. We're doing some emails. How can we start to optimize our conversion rate?
Yeah, well, I love this approach to do this with email. I would probably choose for the same thing there, because there is so much to win, and it is rather easy. And now with optimization, there is one thing, and I introduced that. I call it the rule of 100. If you want to test something and whether A is better than B, then you need at least 100 yeses.
Okay.
And if you find out in the yeses that A is 50 and B is 50 yeses, then you know that there's no difference. You can go. It's not a Pareto thing. You can go for the next test.
Gotcha.
But sometimes you'll find that one is doing 70% of all the clicks and the other only 30. Well, then you know you have a very, very big thing, and you should go along with that and not only test it in that part of the journey, but implement it everywhere.
Okay.
And test,
you can be
test
fairly
it.
confident
Yeah,
at that point.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so there's these things. Now, if we start with email, then it's going to be very easy to have an email base big enough to get to this rule of 100. So, for instance, if you normally have an open rate of, well, let's not make it too high, but for calculation's sake, would be a high one, 50%. That means that I only need an audience of 200 to test a subject line.
Right.
To get to this the thing, because if normally it's 50% and I do one other one, and that's going to be 30 clicks only, then we know we should go to the other direction. But
Right.
we'll also eventually find an A/B test subject line that has a 70%. Well, not 70% open rate, but that goes so much better than the other one.
Right.
And well, the next one we could test is the call to action. But we need a little bit bigger audience, but especially if we have found a better subject lines to get better open rates in the beginning, then here we're going to easily get good click-through rates that we can test as well.
Yep.
But if we then take it one more step further and say, no, but I also want the people who click, I want conversions out, them to convert on my landing page, and especially if it's a donation page, yeah, then you need a bigger audience to come to statistically relevant tests of your landing page of this traffic.
Right.
But
Right.
it is the main thing to do, because this way you can really make big steps. So in my book, I found out the M&R benchmarks.
Yeah.
That in the United States, the average income is $78 out of every 1,000 emails sent. But if you're really fanatic about optimizing and you've built a good relationship, so good engagement with your audience, I have also seen that some organizations get $3,500 out of every 1,000 emails sent,
Right.
which is exactly what we've been doing here. So how can I optimize the open rate? How can I optimize the click-through rate? How can I optimize the landing page conversion? And
Right.
then, especially in this part, landing page conversion, there's so much you can do by making it easy. So to become, in fact, customer focused or donor focused when making the donation page, because so many of us we let them fill in the whole form again, like
Right.
you're doing a tax form or so. We know their name, we know their gender at that moment. If we send them an email, we know their email address. So if we
Yep.
don't ask that again, but do a little trick with that,
Yep.
then yeah, that's easy way to double your income there.
Yeah, and there are many tools that can help you do this at this point. That used to be very hard. You used to have to get a developer to help you custom build something. But now it's easy to make a Perl or a personalized URL. It's easier to have the person's name there. It's easier to have the expected giving amounts. It does require some of your tools to speak to each other, or it does require you to be on something like Salesforce that integrates with a lot of different sort of tools, and not have this sort of skunkworks in the background of rather than systems talking to each other, you have staff talking to each other and like pulling different Excel lists and updating different things. But all that stuff, you have all the tools in the book. It's a bit too much to get into detail today, but all those details are in the book in terms of what tools you use and what tools are required to make this work.
Yeah, and just one of the tests, if you have the email address, obviously because you have their email address, if you just make sure they don't have to fill in this email address again, which is for syntax, it's not an easy thing to fill in, and you pre-fill it or you hide it, it's 50% extra income from your emails. So it's been tested so many times, and that just works. So yeah, and here you don't need tools or Salesforce or departments talking to each other. You just need to do something clever there.
Yeah. You talk about email segmentation in a few different ways, but one of them I want to get into, which I think is an easy place to start, is just top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. Help us explain those three concepts: the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel. What are those three different segments of audiences?
So when we talk about email, let's say that we want to have an audience, and some we only see them as anonymous visitors, others we know by email address, and others we know by email address and donation behavior. So it's a little step there. Now we can also look at our audience, and especially Facebook audiences. We could say, well, this is an audience that we don't know yet. So we're going to exclude from the audience everybody who is already a lead with us, or we're going to exclude anybody who is already a donor with us. Now, if you exclude the leads and the donors, what remains is the top of the funnel, people who might become interested in you, but they're not anyway connections yet. So that's top of the funnel, tofu. and it's just a way of excluding two audiences. Then comes the MOFU audience, middle of the funnel. There you can say, well, everybody who is in a very simple way, we've already got their email address, but some do other definitions, say, well, returning visitors. You could also, well, they're a little bit further than the top of the funnel, so they're somewhere between the tofu and the mofu. But let's call them, let's see them as also mofu people.
Yeah.
And then there's of course people that have already given or have given in the last 24 months or whatever definition you want to do there.
Yeah.
And you'll see, of course, when you're sending emails to your donor audience, you're going to get so much better open rates, click-through rates, and donation rates than when you send it to your leads audience. And you cannot send emails yet to your TOEFL audience because you don't have email addresses. But also, if you do advertising to these same groups on Facebook, or Google, of course, you can see the same differences. That the further they are in your funnel or your donor pyramid, the more engagement you're going to see. With these.
And so what you might optimize for in the top of the funnel where you don't have somebody's email yet is you might optimize the retargeting layer, which is where they've seen one of your ads, they've clicked on the thing, they've landed on your landing page, but they didn't convert, whether it's a donation or a lead magnet, whatever you've got going on. But then they're in your retargeting layer, so they're gonna get follow up sort of ads from you. And many of those people, it's not that they weren't interested, it just wasn't the right time. They pulled it up on their phone, they landed there, seemed interesting, but they're in line at the grocery store and they're putting their phone away, and then that's it, right? And then your retargeting layer is where a lot of the conversions actually end up happening, not the first time they see your ad. So a few key things to optimize that you point out. One is the conversions on your landing page. So people who land on your landing page, how many are converting? Number two is sort of turnover from existing customers, that is donors. That's one of the things that you can optimize for. Preventing cancellations of monthly recurring gifts, and then also just traffic, which is getting better at finding the right kind of traffic to land on your landing page. And if you're spending money and you're getting the traffic, but the traffic is not converting, then either you're getting the wrong kind of cold traffic, or there's something wrong with your value proposition and your offer that people just aren't clicking through, right?
And then you can optimize that by just changing the text in the ad, and then if you get more clicks, then obviously you're doing something right. Then you don't have to. You should not forget to change that text or this image also on your landing page.
Yeah. Now, the ads aren't free. You're spending for the ads, but changing the words you use is free. And that's the amazing thing about fundraising. We can change those words anytime we want. And we can see if that makes a difference or not.
Yes, and we've heard enough in this podcast what difference that can do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, so that's phase number 2. Phase number 3 is... we've built a stream. We're starting to optimize. We're getting smarter. Phase number 3 is we're going to segment even better. So phase 3 is all about better segmentation and beginning to personalize a lot more. Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about personalization in the sense that we were talking about personalization in phase 2, where we're just like using their name a lot, or using their name in clever ways, or pre-filling out a name. We're actually talking about knowing donors more in detail, right?
Yes. So the segmentation, so the personalization, of course, is part of it is the name, but personalization would, in my opinion, also be the knowledge you have about their giving behavior. So if they are a high value giver, you're not going to give them, in this phase at least, you're not going to send them the same email. You're going to
Right.
not do the same proposition via the telephone as for people who are leads. Because if they're a lead, I'd be very happy if either by telephone or by email they turn into a donor, and even if they give $5 or $10 or $20, I'd be so happy
Right.
with that step. Whereas if they're my big high value donor who every time that you ask them they give $1,000,
Right.
then yeah, I'd not be happy. But in the
Right.
segmenting phase, and we've all been doing that for decades in the direct marketing business, so with postal appeals, there of course we do this gift ladder, but in a lot of email, it's not been done, and
Yeah.
well, it's a very very easy thing, of course, at a certain phase where you have this information to say, well, I'm going to make uh, maybe 6 variants of my email to make sure that I cater for the right audience with the right amounts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, in direct marketing, we've been using RFM forever, like RFM scores.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we hopefully more and more we're using RFM to decide who gets the piece, but not necessarily on how to tailor the messaging. Hopefully, we have better information than just the RFM, like identity, values, what
Uh-huh.
they care
Yeah.
about, that kind of stuff, which is a more meaningful message than just the giving behavior. But you funded some research around using the Myers-Briggs personality types and knowing how to speak to different kinds of types, and you found that an easy step, most mass fundraising, an easy step is just improving it by catering to the two groups of Myers-Briggs that um, each group has a bunch of Myers-Briggs sort of
Mm-hmm.
adjacent personality types, but one is the
Yeah.
guardians
Yeah.
and one is the artisans. So that's an easy first step. Tell me a little bit more about the guardians and the artisans and how we can easily change our fundraising to at least speak to those groups, because that's the majority of people.
Yeah. And just well, in the steps of the book, I introduce it maybe indeed only by saying let's also uh, let's try to cater for these two types in one email, and then it
Yeah.
fits in this phase. But when we talk about segmenting, there's all kinds of segmentations, like the financial segmentation, and within the financial segmentation, there's RFM, but there's also uh, interest segmentation or behavior segmentation. These people always give when I ask for dogs, but not for bears. Um,
Right.
so apes, dogs, and bears and cats. Um,
Yeah.
so and then the well the most clever uh, way, or not the most clever, but something that can bring you further than that even, is to adjust the tone of voice that you're using on an individual level. But so that's how I introduce um, uh, this in the segmentation. It is a way to segment using the Myers-Briggs segmentation. Um, but so you might have to. Well, we are going. You
Sure.
have to probably cut this out a bit. Um, but I hope it stays logical for
Yeah,
everybody in
absolutely.
this phase where we say you talk about segmenting. Yeah, but the segmenting, there's so much we can do with just interest-based segmenting, and and financial segmenting and engagement
Right.
segmentation. So I don't want to make it too difficult here. So that's why in my book I waited a little while
Yeah.
before we do this. But it's always
Sure.
so much
No,
fun to talk about it. So
And I'm just
yeah,
revealing my personal bias here because I'm like that. I saw that I was like, oh
yeah,
man, that's
okay,
interesting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So you were asking something, and then I was answering, and it went wrong a bit.
yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
let's get back into the different ways of segmenting basically. So we can use RFM as one way to segment. What are some of the other ways that we can segment?
Well, we can. The basics is demographics. Maybe men and women uh, react differently, so you could try different messages for them. Um, uh, Maybe income based or whatever. If you have these kind of data, and most people have, most organizations have. So demographic. Then comes the contribution, the
Yeah,
financial segmentation, and of course RFM is one of them. But
yeah,
there's more ways to look at your database, just the finance of your database. But it's not good enough, because in the beginning I was saying we shouldn't be too much focused on fundraising, but especially on engagement raising.
right,
So the much more rich way to segment is to look at the interest of people, or the engagement they have with you. Because if I have somebody and they're not engaged with me, it doesn't make sense to ask them for money. Um, and if I have people, let's act as if we're doing something for a charity with animals. So we have apes, bears, cats, and dogs. A, B, C, D. Um, but any charity has kind of these interest fields. If
right,
somebody is always interested in giving for apes, but not so much for bears and cats and dogs, then um, if I have a general ask, I could, well, make four of these general asks, uh, each catering for their interest.
right,
And the same we can do with maybe their welcome email, etc. So especially the kind of subject these people like is a very rich way to, yeah, become more donor centric.
right,
Um, so demographic, contribution, behavioral, and behavioral all kinds of forms. And then on top of the segmentation framework, we also have attitude or psychographic segmentation. And in this case, I like to see that as the Myers-Briggs type indicator, for example. But
right.
then, well, then you go into
Now,
16 segments. But
yeah,
if you just take Kersey, they take 4 segments, and everybody has normally caters for these 4 segments. So it's very easy way also to
right,
become more relevant and to adjust your tone of voice
yeah,
for the difference between the inspector type and the blue type, we call them. They like to read and have all the details and make no mistakes. So if you want to cater for them, yeah, you should put the factual stuff in there, but you
right,
don't want to get the artisan people, or the sunshine yellow optimistic.
right.
These people, Samantha in the Sex and the City model. Um,
Uh-huh.
that you cannot pinpoint them, so you have to grab their attention and come with something interesting for them very, very quickly, and they're
Right.
not going to read all the details.
So
So
Myers Briggs, it's 16 personality types. It's going to be very hard for you to know every personality type that every one of your donors has, and then it's going to be hard to. I mean, you're talking 16 different segments. That's going to be that it's incredibly advanced. However, like you said, they do break down into 4 different sort of quadrants,
mhm,
and there are 2 of those quadrants that account for a large majority of the people. And so those are the guardians and the artisans, and
mhm,
we don't have to necessarily get into that. You can Google that, but if you're running a campaign and it's like a 4 or 5 email campaign, we can make sure that at least 1 or 2 of those emails for sure sort of caters to the guardians and the artisans, and those are people who make decisions based on they need a little bit more information, right? They need to really quickly know what is this about, what are some of the details. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and but the beauty is that you can always do it in one email, because you
Right,
know for sure that if somebody reads this detailed stuff at the bottom, uh, they're not going to be your artisan. They're not going to
right,
be the Samantha. They're going to be the Charlotte types in the Sex and the City model. So
right,
they want all the details and they want certainty. So if I make an email and I don't know my audience, but I do know that these tips, I know for certain these two types are going to be there. So
yeah,
I'll write something that catches the attention of the first one, but it doesn't really turn off Charlotte. And she's going to say, well, yeah, but show me the details. And then she'll read
right,
on for the details. Yeah.
yeah, yep. Yep. That makes sense. We call it the junk drawer at the bottom, sometimes on the website too. Include all the information at the bottom. The people who really want to know, they're going to go and they're going to find it. And so you do need that every now and again for people who want the detailed information.
Yeah,
I'm,
well, you need 50% of your content should be for these people
yep.
normally. Whereas, well, maybe in the beginning, 50% should be much more the, 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 the trigger happy
Right.
utilitarian information. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I fall under the idealist bucket, so that's the minority of people.
Mhm.
However, I think it's a good amount of fundraisers fall under that bucket because it's people who are interested in. I mean, they're diplomatic, but they're also interested in relationships and they're interested in actually personal development and growth. And so, most people listening to a fundraising podcast are probably interested in personal development and growth. The reason they're listening is because they want to get better at what they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting. If somebody's listening to this, you can Google that. You can get into the guardians and the artisans and the idealists. Phase 4 is multi-channeling.
Let me just add to that in digital marketing, it is possible and relatively easy to also build the profile of somebody. So if you see that somebody is always clicking on the bottom of the page, then it's just a way of tagging that information. And
Right.
after 5 clicks, you know that, well, to personalize further with them, you
Yeah.
could use what I call make blue content for them, whereas others have it differently. And
Yeah.
well, of course, we're gonna only use that in a later phase, but please go ahead and at least start with this kind of stuff, because it's
Yeah.
easy win.
Yeah. All right. So that's phase 3. Phase 4 is multi-channeling. When at the time of the recording, we're like 2 years into COVID. If a nonprofit wasn't multi-channel before, they are now, or they're probably close to being out of business. But there's a lot we can get into. One of the interesting things I thought that you pointed out is having your digital team and your CRM be connected to a call center. And most nonprofits aren't using the phone enough as it is. They don't have an in-house phone team. Most nonprofits don't have a call center. They don't like using the phone. They're afraid of talking to donors. But you actually say, there's a great opportunity here is to support your digital fundraising, is to establish this connection to a call center or to an in-house team that's making phone calls. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. What was already confusing in our market is if I would have called the book Online Fundraising, then you miss more than half the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
What I strongly believe is that every organization, also charities, will become what we call a software organization. So whatever our customers do, we keep track of that to make our conversations more relevant. And one of these things is to contact them via, well, more than one channel, but not only the channel that we prefer
Right.
because we say, well, you can answer now via the channel that we like. So we'll get, and especially with the GDPR, we get more and more tick boxes of, yes, you can call me, you can send me this and this kind of emails, you
Right.
can send me something by post. And the customer becomes more in control. And for this, we need some kind of CRM system to keep track of this kind of information. But once we have that, and we have all the information about their psychographic uh, segmentation criteria and their giving behavior and the interests, and we also know about their channels, then yeah, every day we're going to be sending maybe 1,000 little campaigns,
Yeah.
and some go via the call center, and some go via email, or because they clicked on the email but they didn't do the thing we expected them to do, we're going to
Yeah.
help them either by chat or by the call center.
Yeah.
So it's this digital world, and they used to be very separate. Say, well,
Right.
you do the call center and you do the
Yeah.
you do the email, you do the online acquisition, but it's all the same customer, and we can use almost the same content for
Yeah.
each of these customers.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's lots of easy ways to sort of understanding how best to communicate, right? Like one easy way is on your support page or on your homepage. More and more nonprofits are starting to have a little chat bot, or they're starting to have this actual support page. Like if you have questions, click here, um, and you can give people the option. Hey, you can send us an email here, or you can chat with a
mhm.
donor care representative right in this chat box. Or you can text this number and somebody will text you back. Or you can call this number and somebody will pick up and help you. And so, depending on the choice that donor makes in that moment, that gives you a bit of an idea of a channel preference that they might have. Do
Yes, so
you see it?
it can be. There's always two kinds of ways to know about their preferences. First, the one I like the best, the implicit one, is what they do.
Right.
Um, and that is a knowledge you can easily build up um, with the right systems. And the other one is by asking them, so it's explicit information about
Yeah.
them and their preferences. Um, and yeah, the more you do this, the better your profiles get.
Right.
Um,
So an explicit way might be after they made a gift, saying, "Hey, you know what? A lot of supporters feel like they don't know if their money was used effectively, and we're on a mission to change that. So we're going to update you on how your money was used. How would you like us to do that? Would you like us to send you an email, a text? Would you like us to call you? Would you like us to how do you want to get your update on the gift that you just made?"
I
Right.
love that because it's something that not doesn't necessarily cost us money, but it's a lot of value that we give this way. And
Yeah.
well, it's the same way we do with lead magnets. You find something that has a lot of value for the customer, but it doesn't cost you that much in principle. And
Yeah.
once you're into this mode of continuous campaigns, then it's so easy to just add that to
Right.
to the list. So exactly like you're proposing now,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's a good idea to ask this to the people who who have just donated, and then yeah, and then
Yeah.
see what that does. Yeah.
Yeah, and just imagine, I mean, trust is built by making promises and keeping them.
Hmm?
And great customer service and great customer experiences is built by making big promises and then like going over and above to like you're not only keeping your
Yeah.
promise, you're like exceeding your promise, right? So you can do multiple things at once here. Is you can build a lot of trust, provide a great donor experience, and also start to find out how your donors, giving them a lot of autonomy by putting them in the driver's seat, and they
Mhm.
get to choose how you're going to update them. Phase 5 this is for the real pros. This is real personalizing in real time. You recommend using a behavior targeting tool, building up some sort of behavior targeting tool. What is a behavior targeting tool?
A behavior targeting tool is something that used to cost a lot of money just 10 years ago, and now I expect it every day. I expect it to be something you get as a plugin, a free plugin with your WordPress website.
Right.
It is a way just to track what people have looked at on your website. So let's do the example of an easy one: an e-commerce site that sells clothes. If they click on men's clothes every time, then the system just builds up this knowledge and says, well, out of the 10 clicks this person did, there were 10 clicks on men's clothes. So if this person comes back, and they do this with cookies, and they come back to the homepage, then it's not going to be an even split between men's clothes and women's clothes and children's clothes.
Right.
It's just going to be a little bit more focused on men's clothes, and then it goes deeper. Like if you just in the men's clothes looked for sneakers, then the homepage, but also the next phases, and maybe even your emails can have some more information or offers about sneakers. So behavior targeting is just tracking the behavior of people on websites.
Right.
What the behavioral knowledge building and the targeting is to do something with that information, to target these people, to see this as a segment. Yeah.
Sure. And are you when you implement this sort of a thing, are you already tying that? Are you just tying that behavior to an IP address, or to your whatever, your Facebook pixel, your LinkedIn Insights tag, your Google tag? They're going to all work together with this. Or are you already identifying people who are in your CRM, and your CRM is starting to have more and more information about people in it?
Yeah. So the good thing, it will probably take you some time to get a substantial part of your base known this way, but it's very profitable, but also good for the relationship to note down that, for instance, if I send somebody an email, and I know this person is a donor and I know their email address, I send them to my website. They're first going to open it maybe on their desktop, and then some days later they open via their mobile phone, and then maybe via their iPad. So I know that I can kind of combine all these cookies that they have via the various devices and say, well, but this is 99% certain one person. And then I can build up this wealth of knowledge to make the conversation more relevant time and time again.
Right. Well, this has been fantastic, Ewald. You've given us lots to think about. What I love about this conversation is that we are right in the middle of this tension between donors and people, consumers, saying that they more and more expect personalized experiences from brands. They should know me. They know I've given this many times. They know I like this. They know, they shouldn't be getting these details wrong or treating me like one in a million.
Yeah.
And at the same time, more and more donors and consumers and people say, I don't want brands to invade my privacy. I don't want them to have information on me. I want to shield that from all of them, right? And of course, those things are in total opposition, because the way that we build personalized experiences is by collecting more information, and we need to find a way to do both. And the reason people are so protective of their personal information is because, of course, brands have misused that trust and that information. And so I think our calling as fundraisers is to be savvy, because it is generous to show up in people's lives with a personalized experience. That's an act of generosity we can do for them. So to be savvy in how we see them, how we listen to them, and how we build experiences that we think will ultimately help them become a better person by being more generous, and at the same time not abusing that information and sort of being these creepy marketers who are trying to extract every penny, which is why your book is all about doing it with love and not treating donors like an ATM, but treating them.
Yeah, and so the whole thing about bringing love in the equation is saying it's not a numbers game of, okay, if I send just enough postal emails or make enough annoying phone calls, then somebody eventually is going to say yes. Um, it happens more that you use smaller audiences where you build this relationship, well, build movements.
Yeah,
We have a beautiful example of all kinds of apps that organizations have built that help people in general, but they also, yeah, make them kind of addicted or a friend with the people who give this, who gave them these apps. And I like it so much more this way, because if you really bring value, then you can then you become a friend, and they don't care
right.
so much. Well, they like it if you have information about them that you can use, uh, well, to become more relevant.
Yeah,
But if you just go with the old way, yeah, there it's pretty annoying. It's
yeah,
like Google. Well, I tend to give lots of information to Google, but they use it in a way that is really, well. They make it whatever they offer is much more relevant, and
yeah,
and then, yeah, it, it goes a long way, what you can do. So it's the way how we become friends, and or bring them into our movement.
yeah.
Uh,
Right.
what's gonna solve this dilemma?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and with participation, with donor participation in charitable causes dropping and dropping and dropping, fewer and fewer people actually being involved with charitable causes. I think we owe it to the world, and we owe it to the people we're trying to help, and we owe it to our causes, um, to be world class marketers and world class fundraisers, and to go deep into this kind of stuff. And I hope that leadership sees it the same way, and that leadership funds this kind of stuff, and give people the autonomy to start implementing this digital transformation. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We ask every guest who comes on the show, do you have a piece of advice, a word of encouragement to all the nonprofit leaders, fundraisers, marketers out there who are doing the hard work of building good in our world day in and day out?
Yeah. And since you were saying, well, it's a lot of operational, technical uh, people here, and maybe not all leaders, but leaders listen as well. My advice is to really invest in yourself, in building up all kinds of digital knowledge, uh, to, of course, make much more profit and help these charities that you're working for survive. Because that's, in my opinion, it's only going to be the digital way to survive. But also invest in yourself to make sure you get the same kind of salary as people in the commercial industry get, because you know the drill on how to become much more relevant.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then not by waiting for a marching order from somebody, but just, well, the Nike way. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. If people want to find you, if they want to know more, if they want to buy your book, if they want to sort of see where you hang out and enter your universe, where can they do that?
Yeah, then the easiest way, because Ewald Verhoog is not going to spell so easy, but fundraising.love is the website where you can find the book, where you can sign up for the courses, and where you can find my bio as well. So fundraising love.
Fundraising.love. What a great domain. Love it. And thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you very much. for having me on the podcast.